Hi, and welcome to the FX Podcast. I'm John Montgomery. Our guest for this episode is Zap Andersson, a render expert and self-described AI nerd. Now, we had Zap on the show back in December of last year, and it's only been 9 months, but so much has changed in the generative AI video field that we've got him back again to talk about his workflows and processes. And that includes some of the cool new tools, such as Nano Banana, Google Gemini's really amazing image generation tool. So let's go ahead and join that discussion now as Mike talks to Zap.
Zap, thanks so much for taking time to talk to us again, my friend.
Thank you for allowing me to be on the show again.
So we've talked to you in the past when you've been doing experiments with AI. Obviously, you have a tremendous background in rendering, but you have these really interesting personal projects that you've been doing. And once again, I was struck with one of your experiments, and I was very keen to talk to you about it. How have you been, and what have you been up to?
Oh, I've been up to a lot of things. And as I always answer when people ask me how I've been, I'm still alive. So that is still the case. Last time I checked.
That's better than the option of not being
It is
alive.
better than the other option, correct. So what I've been up to, all sorts of things, work. But of course, I'm still playing with the AI thing. And for instance, I think it was back in December we last talked. And for some incredibly silly reason, I never actually mentioned the Christmas special of Unreal Mysteries, which was kind of done even then. But so just for those who remember our previous talk about the Unreal Mystery stuff, there was a Christmas episode. And me being me, of course, it's a musical. Right. And of course, it's a post-apocalyptic musical set 10 years into the future where literally
with gun-toting little gingerbread men and
yes,
alike.
and zombies and aliens, because literally every apocalypse has happened. Economic collapse, COVID 26, 27, 31, and 34. And the internet has crashed everything. Elon Musk has done the Kessler syndrome, so there's no satellites anymore. Everything is absolute crap. And everyone is sitting grilling rats over a barrel in the street. And that's the very nice Christmas special episode, which is fun. And yes, it's a musical because I'm crazy. For the AI part, there's not so much new tech in that one, really. It's kind of the same we talked about last time. The only difference is since there's only a few available shots of my avatar, I'm getting kind of bored with the backgrounds. I did some, magic mask in DaVinci and put them in, cozy fireplace. It's Christmas after all, so you have to fix that.
So in that process, what you were doing was taking Google Notebook LM and stuff, and you were creating like this dialogue between two characters, and then you were realizing what the characters would look like, and of course using the dialogue that was generated, and you were producing these kind of interesting stories. And from our point of view, it wasn't so much the clickability or the likes that we were zoning in on, but it was just some of the telltale signs that the technology had. For example, in some of the technology, you would feed a clip and it would make characters say the lines that you were giving them from a separate audio feed, but it would play the clip backwards. So our actors were actually walking backwards while delivering the line forwards, if that makes sense. So these were like really telltale experiments about, oh, okay, so I can see there are limits. So we're not coming at this from a point of view of like, hey, everything is roses. It's more like through your really interesting explorations, we get to see what some of the limits are and where some of the places are that the technology could potentially be useful.
Yeah, exactly. And the next thing I did, which is so far in the whole Unreal Mystery saga, so far I guess it's the season finale or something. There's a Space Miners episode, which was kind of my first attempt of really trying to do consistent character stuff, because they introduced a feature in the video tool I'm using, the Hilo Minimax, which was a reference thing. So you could like give a face and then do text to video, but you also included the face, and I want this face. So I invented this guy called Malcolm Steele, which is a space miner, and the whole episode is about his space mining. And it's funny and all this kind of stuff. The interesting part with this one is, yes, this whole reference thing, it doesn't work perfectly, because unfortunately the problem, again, we say back then, which is like January or something. It's always funny to talk to you with this. We say talk about the olden times, and it's just months ago. But anyway, back then, you couldn't have both a reference and a starting image. So that means that while you could make this one person look kind of the same in various clips, the room they were in now were different every freaking time. And that's where we're going to get to at the end when we get go bananas. But I'm just going to go through the stuff. So, and the other thing I did also in that video, I wanted other characters to talk rather than those Hagen avatars. And Hagen at the time had a photo feature. You can just send it the picture and make that picture talk. But that was very kind of simple, and it was just the head slightly moving. It was not terribly useful. So, and I already had some kind of videos. So what I wanted to try to achieve was to like change the lip sync on the video I already had. Hagen doesn't give you that feature, but Runway added a thing called Act 1, which is a thing where you can act out a facial behavior for a video you already have. So I tried that, and I tried to myself do like the talking, and for the audio that I already had, because I had made voices in 11 Labs. Malcolm Steele has a very thick voice, so I tried to.
We're just going to have to slow down here a little bit for people that are trying to catch up. Okay, so the original project was Google LM that was producing a conversation, which you would then use Hagen characters to take that audio, feed them in, and their pre-created AI characters, were generatively AI generated, would say that dialogue, right? And then you jumped a little, because there's an approach with some AI tools now where you can provide a first frame and a last frame, and it will get you from first to last. And you did a great thing with yourself doing a handstand or a flip, right? Where you're coming towards camera and flip over.
And back then it was really only first frames. We're getting to the last frame stuff, which is fairly recent, at least in the tool I'm using. But you could give it the first frame, and I used that in many of the episodes, the ability to give a first frame. But
like a starting point,
it's like a starting point for everything, But now I was in there, I have this character, I want him to say stuff, and I have this generated synthetic thick voice I want to use for the guy.
Right, and so that's where 11 Labs come in. So 11 Labs is just producing a speech from text, right?
Yes.
And was this a voice you made, or was this one of the ones that came from 11 Labs?
No, that's the interesting. It's a voice I made, because also 11 Labs at the time added this feature, create your own voice. So you say, I want a deep, thick, raspy voice. And I actually asked for I think I asked for like a goblin or something weird like that, which it was totally not a goblin voice. But you think the deepest, raspiest trailer voice you ever heard, I love that voice, and I used it for everything, to be honest, since then. But I wanted this guy that I had use this voice. I couldn't do it with Hagen back then. Again, back then, it sounds like forever ago. So I came up with a trick, because Runway had added this Act 1 feature where you could move your own face and make something happen. So I tried that. I tried to mime myself as I had the recording, and I tried to mime to it. And I did that for a few shots. And when I did that, I could actually get expressions as well. So emphasis the words. But it's actually surprisingly hard if you have a recording and mime to it in time with even if you loop it and do it over and over again, which is kind of what I did until I got a good take. It's actually hard. You're still slightly off sync, and it doesn't really look good. Then I thought, wait a minute, I said, stroking my beard, Hagen can generate talking faces. So I just stuck the audio in Hagen, took just a generic face, just make it talk, because I already I have the credits, I have the stuff. So I just had some face of a guy talking, and then I used that one through Runway Act 1 to drive Malcolm.
Okay, so just to give a summary, so you've made the voice. The voice is now driving a generative AI, a generic one. We don't expect to see that face, but because that face is accurately lip sunk, or rather the visemes and the phonemes are connecting, you can then take that video and feed it in as a input with the face that you want to get the correct lip sync. And of course, the original audio that you've made from 11 Labs goes all the way through.
Precisely. So I got now then talking people that were not Heian avatars anymore. Heian was still involved as the key feature to make the good lip sync. But I could now sort of, through this trick that go via runway, make other things talk. And since I already kind of made a musical, well, basically the entire credit sequence in that episode is a 5-minute rap video where Malcolm Steele and his friends are rapping about being space miners. It's kind of fun. So don't stop when you think it's over. Get to the end. Keep going through the credits. Actually, it's honestly the best bits, but it's funny. And by the way, another thing I remember we mentioned in the previous talk we had is that since we're basing this all of Notebook LM stuff, and I realized that Notebook LM does these little pauses for ads, I thought let's like lean into that. So I even told Notebook, because Notebook LM has like a system prompt where you can tell it stuff, where I can tell you are David and Hannah and you're like the host of Unreal Mysteries, and I say you're going to have 2 ad breaks and you're going to mention it explicitly. So it really likes, now we're going to the ads and stuff like that. So, and of course in the Christmas post-apocalyptic episode I had the Bigfoot spa treatment ad and a robot uprising ad about human sacrifice, obviously. And in the space miner one there's some very strange ads, because I actually typed random shit into my AI tools and I got completely crazy imagery that looked like insane stuff. And I stuck that through Audio, which is a thing that can add sound effects to video. And I got crazy sounds. And I said, oh, great. These are aliens made these.
So that's
ads.
a sound effect, effectively like a sound effect library. Yeah.
Well, it looks at the video. Audio basically synthesizes what it sees in the video and creates those sound effects. Right. So if you have some guy, and you can give it a prompt to focus on stuff, and you can get a negative prompt, because like I don't want music in it. Say music in negative prompts. I don't get music. I say I want the footsteps of these guys walking across the street, and I get the footsteps and stuff like that. It's really useful. But I used it in the dumbest way possible, because that's me. I stuck insane stuff into it and I got insane sounds out, and I thought, okay, perfect, this is an ad made by an alien. So, and I don't know what the ad is about. I have no idea. I generated some woman voice, like, you know, the video generator loves to make people talk. We mentioned that in the previous episode, even when I don't want it to. But in this case, I generated some alien cybernetic women talking, and I stuck it through Audio, and I said, yeah, make a whispering voice. And I get this alien robotic woman saying, so I added some alien language to it, like, perfect. We have an ad.
Okay, now I'm going to pause you there. I don't want to discuss any more specific projects that you've done just yet. We're going to come back to Nano Banana and Nano's work from Google. What I want to discuss is the 2 principles that you've highlighted. Firstly, it's this idea of ganging up a series of independent sort of AIs. And I guess my question is, do you think that is now the default way that you would approach any project, that you would assume that you're going to have basically a smorgasbord of available apps, and then you're going to pick them and then work out how to cascade them effectively to get what you want? Like, is that sounds like your sort of modus operandi?
That is my kind of modus operandi right now, yes. And we mentioned last time, of course, using Conf.ui for hooking stuff up.
I was going to ask about that next year.
Yeah. So the interesting part is that Conf.ui, and I added like an API node, which means if you don't have the thing running locally, but it exposes an API, you can just stick in the stuff you need to call that API somewhere else. So you can actually, in the middle of your Conf.ui workflow, you can, if you want, have like a service, like Audio, for instance. I think actually Audio is something you can run locally, but say the Hilo video generator, I could in theory use it in the middle of Conf.ui. It will sucking my credits, obviously, but it would work. I haven't done that because, you know, I'm already paying too much for credits. So, but it's possible. So you could like build these whole workflows.
Do you think though that given our current fast evolving network, that you could spend maybe too much time building a Conf.ui model only to then discover that something new comes along, and you so like almost like taking the trouble to to standardize it is actually not worth the effort at the moment, or?
That depends on who you are. When you're a stupid guy in a garage like me, it definitely doesn't make sense because I want to try new things all the time. That's what I do. So I really never really standardize. It's a lot of drag dropping a thing from one thing into another in just multiple browser windows that ends up happening. Or from maybe sometimes I generate stills in Conf UI and like drag drop them into the high-low Minimax video generator or something like that. So there's a lot of super ad hoc, and I'm really disorganized with my life, especially files. I give a file a funny name. I think it's really funny when I save it, and then when I need the file, I never remember what the hell the funny name. What the hell I called it.
The exact opposite of what you should do in production. So
yes.
So let me ask you this: is nearly all of this stuff being done in the cloud, or are you trying to run stuff locally?
I've been trying to run stuff locally, and I do have a pretty beefy GPU. I have a Quadro 8000 with like 48 gigs of VRAM. The trick is, though,
VRAM is important, isn't it?
VRAM is very, very important for these kind of things. And I tried the 1.2.1 and 1.2.2 models you can run locally. And while they make decent stuff, it ties up my computer. It still takes like 10 minutes to make a video. When I can just throw it at high-low and I can have 5 running in parallel, that takes like maybe 5 minutes to do. And I paid for the bloody credits anyway. So I played around with stuff locally, and I'm going to do some more of that. But for the recent time, it is mostly using various online services for stuff.
And the second thing I want to ask you is, how much is this being done in generative AI for someone that's listening? And how much is it, you've done stuff in Gen AI, but actually you're using Nuke or other tools to actually get us over the finish line? Like, how much are you sort of using a hybrid approach, or how much are you pretty much sticking with what you're getting out of these particular services?
So I would say I try, like, since these are all experiments mostly, I try to see what I can get sort of straight out of the AI stuff. Of course, I mean, I edit it, I do some color correcting, and I put some subtitles on or all this kind of stuff. And like I mentioned in the Christmas episode, I changed the backgrounds because the avatars I chose for my heroes are actually the ones that has the fewest different camera angles. I'm stuck using the same over and over, and it's get really boring. At least I changed the background, so it's slightly better. But I haven't done that much. I'm sort of trying to get away with not doing it as much as possible.
Yeah, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, and it's just the reason that I'm trying. I mean, if you were doing a real production, of course you would take all the tools, but I'm trying to see what I can do with these particular tools.
I think it's important for people to know that, though, because otherwise you're thinking, oh, well, I couldn't get those results because it looks pretty good, but I bet you we spent, 10 minutes doing the initial bit and then 4 hours, polishing it. And I think it's interesting what you can actually get out of the engines. Obviously, as you say, in production, we do whatever it takes to make the shot look good because nobody gets points for how you do it. Hey, okay, so at that point, I think that's all been like really interesting. But there was this big shift in the sort of area that we've been talking about when Google released Nano Banana. And then not long after that, you came out with a short film that basically takes the premise of having a good-looking lead actor, who I believe is based on someone we're going to talk about in a second, and just a good-looking leading Hollywood lady type, and place them into what is a much more traditional narrative form. Because what you've been talking about before is somewhat tongue-in-cheek. There's like these, as I say, zombie-wheeling, gingerbread alien kind of shootout stuff. But this new project doesn't have any of that sort of riotous silliness, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was great for its context. But in this one, it's actually trying to look remarkably like something that somebody could reasonably want to do for a high-end ad. Is that a deliberate decision to sort of swing the pendulum the other way?
let me just go step back before that, because I did another thing in between, which is kind of in the end, my failure and what not to do, because I was trying again to make like a more story-driven thing. Of course, as everything starts with tests with me that I then ended together, but still, I was much more deliberate. It's a thing called Day of the Kitten. It's basically, yes, it started as tests of rendering sushi, and it starts with a lot of close-ups of sushi, but there's a kitten in there, and then the Yakuza and SWAT teams come in and they start shooting at each other, and the poor kitten has to get out of the firing line. So I tried to have one woman, which would be the same in a few shots. It's only like 4 different shots, and it's still not like the same exact woman. I used the reference feature I was mentioning, and then just to get these vaguely Asian streets looking, yeah, they're all looking vaguely Asian, but they're all like different between the shots. And it's like, if you want to watch that, go ahead. There's a funny joke at the end that kitten is saved completely. It's fine. So it's not John Wick. It's the opposite.
No AI kittens were harmed in the making of this.
No AI kittens were harmed. No, it looks bad for the kitten in the middle. But you can basically tell this is kind of like the failure. And I know it's too long also, because I kind of gave up in editing and said, "Blah, this is done," because I won't get this good. So that's an example of what you get before the days that just
this is a
arrived
turning
with
point in the process, because we've been discussing stuff that has, variety of images, facial accuracy and lip sync and stuff, but scene to scene or even shot to shot consistency has been the Achilles heel of the programs up until this point.
Yes, and that's why in that sense, again, the Day of the Kitten one is a shining example of the failure mode of that, because I tried to get scene to scene consistently. The bloody cat is a different age in every shot. I had to color correct the freaking cat to have the same color in every shot, etc. But now suddenly we get these LLMs that truly understand images. And I think the first one that we got access to was actually the ChatGPT image generator thingy, which I started playing with. I don't remember what it was called. It's the 4.0 image or something like that. And it was like the first one where you gave it the picture and said, yeah, change the clothes of this person. And it did that very slowly. It took like 10 minutes or something, or 5 minutes for it to do this. And it didn't just change the clothes, it changed the entire picture slightly. So you got kind of the same person, but wearing the clothes you wanted. And if you looked at the pixel, every pixel had changed. And after that, something called Flux Context that was doing the same, you could run locally, which was slightly better. But then a couple of weeks ago, the magical banana appeared. And it was kind of a magical day. And it's kind of funny. The Nano Banana, I presume, was originally just a code name. It was supposed to be called something like Flash 2.5 Preview Image or something like that. But they released it first on the LLM Arena. And LLM Arena is a place where AI companies release their models for testing. So you get this blind testing thing. You ask for something and it runs 2 AI things in parallel, and one on the left half of the screen and one on the right half. And then you get to choose which you liked better. And only after that, it tells you which one it was. So people started seeing on LM Arena, like, what's this Nano Banana thing? And it works really well, because in LM Arena, they called it Nano Banana. And everybody was trying almost like to hack LM Arena to get to use this model, which didn't really exist yet. But it took like a week, and then Google released it in their AI Studio, I think it's called. And first they called it Flash 2.5 Preview. Then realized, no, we're stuck with the banana. So they actually call it Nano Banana now.
I should actually say it's not just the quality of the imagery and the consistency, but a point that I'm sure we'll come to is how quickly it was generating those images.
Yeah. So there's 2 key things, and the quickness is one of them. It takes like 5-10 seconds rather than like minutes for the. But the other key thing is basically when you tell it to change something, only those pixels that affect the thing you tell it to change will change. So like the whole saga that I made, it started with the horribly bad photo of my son. He was doing this goofy face, and he had just dried his hair. The hair was standing like in every direction imaginable, and it's just a crazy picture taken in the kitchen. And I stuck it in Nano Banana and said, give him a haircut. And it gave him a perfectly nice, perfectly combed haircut.
And it still looked like your son.
It still looked exactly, every pixel of his face and everything was unchanged. The only pixels that were, well, they had to invent the kitchen cupboard behind them, which was covered up by his crazy hair, which you can't tell. It looks perfectly fine and filled in. And he gave him a beautiful haircut. I said, wow, that looks stylish as hell. So I'm going to put him in a tuxedo. So I took that picture and I said, put him in a tuxedo. And that looks smashing. He's never been as handsome. Well, he has actually, when he's actually wearing a tuxedo and actually combing his hair. But that was fantastic. So this guy really fits into some hotel ballroom. So I took that picture of the son in tuxedo and said to Nano Banana, hey, put this guy in like a big ballroom. And it did. And I said, wow, he looks like he should be dancing tango with someone. So add like lady in the red dress right next to him. And I got lady in the red dress. And I was like, okay, this is really interesting. So now I'm really getting into like, and everything looks like it invented this ballroom. I didn't give it any reference. This whole ballroom was just whatever it felt like doing when I asked for put my son in a tuxedo in some hotel ballroom thing. So I'm like, okay, can you give me a pose where they're like, you know, when you end dancing tango for those, I don't know how to dance proper tango, but they tend to tip over the girl in some way. So I said, give me some end pose of a tango. And it did. And it still looked like my son. And the ladies were
clear, we're talking about stills at this point.
It's stills. Yeah, this is all stills. I'm generating stills. And I'm like getting quite intrigued because I could get this different pose. And it was actually around the exact same time that the Banana came out, that the Hilo Minimax, the video generator, acquired the end frame feature. It's many other like Kling and stuff had start end frame for a long time. Since I have an unlimited subscription on Hilo, it's just my go-to for historical reasons. So like, oh, it got end frame, cool. And now suddenly I have a start and an end frame from the courtesy of the Banana. So I stuck in, the first frame where they were just standing and the last frame. And I said, insert dancing, basically. And it did. And it put like a dance.
Let me ask you, is there a time duration limit on what you can do now between that first and last frame? Like how many seconds can you have?
There is. So the default in Hilo is 6 seconds. And there is a 10-second mode, which costs more credits, which I don't really use much. So I mostly done the 6-second thing. But remember, if you have the last frame, you can just use that as the first frame of the next thing and make a new last frame for that. So you can chain them together and they actually pixel accurately which is unlike some other AIs where it slightly shifts, but this one, so you can just chain them together. And then the only problem is the animation you get out of Hilo tend to be like, it starts kind of still, it does its thing, and then it kind of ends. And then when you edit in the next thing, it continues, but it's still kind of obvious that
we used to call it the old ease in, ease out.
Yeah, it's very easy and ease out. So that might be like the problem with doing it that way. So you kind of see the seams in the ease in, ease out look of it. And sometimes I just didn't edit them completely together because you can do tricks like you slightly zoom in and make it look like a cut or something, or all these things in editing. You can tinker with it. But it's like now I had like dancing and I thought that was interesting. So what else can I do dancing? And I tried the same first and last shot with various different prompts. So like have them make out in between or whatever, like he gives her a kiss and stuff. And I swapped the start and end frames, and I made some other, shots there, and I had like tango dancing, and I was it's not really tango, but it's dancing, random dancing, and I was like, this is fun. But it's a little boring with just having dancing. So I hereby decide that these are secret agents. So let's try to get some action in here. So I tried to ask the, Nano Banana for like, now they're drawing some guns and stuff. And now we get into the issue that Nano Banana is fairly censored. So it's it seems to react on certain words, and having like guns and blood and these kind of stuff, it's not happy with that and tells you, no, that's against community guidelines. You can't do that. Even ironically, I was trying to just get the reverse angle, because it can do that. If I have some people and say I want the reverse angle, and I'll say shoot from behind, and apparently it decided to censor that because apparently behind is a bad word. So I tried to rephrase that in a way like, no, I want the other direction without saying the word. And it's very inconsistent, because sometimes it says this prompt is illegal and you just run it again and then it works fine. So I really don't know the logic in this. But I had some dancing. I think I got them eventually to hold some guns and pointing at the camera.
You've got a sequence now of both stills and video.
Yeah, I have
in the ballroom.
No, right, in the ballroom. So the next thing I said, like, but they have to be shooting at something, obviously. So I said, can you give me the reverse angle of this, like over the shoulder? And it took a few tries, because sometimes it seems like when you tell Nano Banana to do something, it sometimes just does it to like the subject, but not like the room. And my whole point was like I wanted the room to change.
Yes, not just them.
So it did, yeah, not just them, right? So seeing them from behind but the same room was the opposite of the point. And it took some wording to get that. But suddenly I had basically the view, I think I asked for something, the view seen from their perspective. And then suddenly I say there's an entrance door. So now I got the room in reverse, which looked like a plausible, again, it's a room that it invented out of thin air, right? And now I have the plausible reverse angle of that room. Same chandelier, same decor.
That's what I was going to say. That the really key thing here is that the shots look like they're all in the same room. Because if it was a different room, different time of day, different heights of ceiling, it would all just not work.
It's completely consistent. It's clearly the same room in a different angle. So I said, okay, bad guys with guns come running in, and apparently now that was okay. So I got some bad guys with guns coming in through to the back door, and also the door in the back of the shot. I thought, oh, this is great. I can do something with that, but I need some close-ups. I said close-up of one of the bad guys, because this is one of the things it excels at, and we're going to get to that in a second. But I asked for close-up of a bad guy against the window, and I did get a close-up of the bad guy against the window, with a very nice view through the window of what probably the exterior of this building looked like.
Yes, you have this next point of yours, this next point you're about to make, I found astoundingly interesting.
Yeah, exactly. It's really the best part. So there's a park and there's a little shrubbery, and like, so this thing has already decided what this building looks from the outside.
It's like manicured grounds is how I would describe it.
Yes. So I said, hey, give me an exterior of this building. And boom, I have this mansion building, which looks completely plausible as the outside of this ballroom thingy. It has all the same color scheme. You can see the lights. You can see the freaking chandeliers through the windows and stuff, same as we had in the room. The only thing I wasn't super happy about was it actually put like paving outside and put some stretch limos there. And I was like, but wait a minute. I saw through the window, I clearly saw grass. So I added like the grass because it had multiple references. So I dragged in the one it previously just did for me with the guy against the window, like, hey, this is what it's supposed to look like outdoors. And Nano Banana goes, okay, here you go. And now I have the manicured lawn with the little shrubberies, everything exactly as we just saw through the window. And I'm like, okay, so now I want my heroine. Now I'm going to get delusions of grandeur immediately snaps in, right? So now I want my heroine to somehow arrive there and walk up the stairs. But this is a pretty wide shot. So like, can you give me like a close up of the stairs? And I get like a slight close up, and I'm like, and all this time, the minute I get like I have this wide shot and the close up, it's almost second nature. Like drag them into high-low as a start and end frame and say, "Oh, give me like a push in." Like, and I don't even look. I just set it off and continue working in Nano Banana. So, can you get me like even more close up? Okay, you know the lady in red from, and I drag in the image as a reference, like the lady in red in this image. Put her on the stairs walking up, and I like. Yeah, it did that. She was a little off scale in the first try, so I had to say no, make her smaller, little things like that. It also sometimes, one trick with Nano Banana is that sometimes when you tell it to put one image in the other, it's just like a literal Photoshop cut with nothing. Uh, you have to tell it, no, make this person look like it's like in the scene, and then suddenly you get the lighting, so now you have the correct lighting on her and stuff like that, standing on the stairs, walking up, and I'm like, wow. Okay.
Let me just stop you there for 1 second and get some parameters around what we're talking about, so people that are listening. So how like many iterations would you say when you like went to the outside shot and you fixed that up? Like, are we talking like you had to do 20 tries to get something, or you were getting something in 5?
No.
And was it?
Let's say 5 is like the maximum for almost any attempt. That's the thing. It's so this thing is so obedient and do what you tell it that it's a little bit scary. The only thing that's been tricky for me was what I just mentioned. Sometimes when you tell it to put something, it does like, oh, you wanted like a stencil it in, just it doesn't does any integration. It literally just the Photoshop thing, and you have to use wording as to include it in the scene, and then suddenly it sticks it in there. There's shadows, there's color is right, the lighting is right, and everything.
My experience with Nano Banana is that if I give it an image that is very ill-defined, it's going to favor the prompt to get me a rich image. If I'm giving it an image that's quite rich, then it'll preference the image in what it's doing. In other words, if I said, I gave it like a super literally back of a napkin pencil sketch of just a couple of lines, it's going to go, okay, that's not probably enough to work on. And it'll give me an interpretation almost entirely from the prompt. But if I give it, as you just said, good reference, it zeroes in on that almost first, and then it sort of preferences that almost over the prompt. Would you find that to be the case?
I do find this to be the case. And I have only experimented very briefly with giving it like sketches and make it real, but only so much that I realized this is a very powerful thing. I do have some ideas in my head I had for 20 years of this story I would like to stick out into the world. And I'm seeing like this might be a possibility to actually make that happen now. But
the other thing I just want to quickly get on at this point. So we're talking about incredible, rich density of what would be polygons if it was done in 3D, because the exterior shot is a very, very wide shot with a mansion. It's a lot of detail. And if you're doing that in geometry, it'd be a high poly count, right? If you're ray tracing that. So ray tracing is, and I mean, you would know this better than almost anyone, it's effectively proportional to polygon count, right? And the complexity of the polygon count, obviously with the number of refractive and reflective surfaces, is going to indicate the render time. Now, in the instance where you're inferring, it's more like how many pixels there are, and it kind of doesn't care as much what's in each pixel.
Exactly. Yeah.
So my question to you is, what resolution are you doing this at? And did you find it was sharp enough? Because one of the criticisms is often this stuff comes out kind of blurry and not so sharp.
Yeah. That is completely true. And one issue you ran into with this, I mean, the resolution is the high luminance is 720p, basically the videos. There is a 1080 mode, but again, sucks more credits. And I've been sticking with this. It's basically 720p you're working with. And even then, it seems like the AI is, even today, it's like better at stuff close. Take a face, for instance. If you give it a really nice close-up reference and you say, make this guy, look around, you get it looks really like this person looking around, especially if you give it both the first and the end frame, like you can do now with the help of some banana tricks. But if the guy is like far in the distance, it's you see it's a face. It's like the faces at very long distance can be kind of anything. There's a shot where my son in a tuxedo arrives in a Black Hawk helicopter and he's walking from the helicopter towards the camera, and it actually doesn't look like him at all in that shot. It just looks a guy walking towards the camera.
So this is a really interesting phenomenon, right? Because we've been talking about the scene to shot consistency and how good it is at maintaining the same ballroom, for example. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question is really, do you think that it's because we're so highly tuned as humans to faces that the subtlest shift in the face means that we think it's not realistic? Or do you think that it's better at ballrooms than faces?
No, I actually think that's a completely human thing. Like, for instance, like I said, this thing can zoom indefinitely. And let me give you an example of where this was highly useful. So I mentioned the girl on the stairs, right? So now I want her to arrive somehow. And it had already kind of given me the ideas of stretch limos earlier, although they weren't in any of the shots. I said, can you put like a stretch limo in front of the stairs? And boom, it added basically the same stretch limo it had in front of the stairs in this now slightly more rural version of the mansion. I said, okay, can you add so you have the girl in red is like stepping out of the door of the limo? And yes, it put the girl in red, the door was open, 1 foot out, exactly like it would look if you stepped out of a limousine. So now I say, okay, let's stick this image into the end frame in Hilo Minimax, and only the end frame, which is the interesting part, which I found actually when one of the most useful things is actually to use the end frame feature only, because often we want a scene to end on a particular beat. So you just generate that, and then you tell the video generator, yeah, make this happen as long as it ends here. So in that case, I said, okay, have the stretch limo drive-in, stop, the door opens, and the girl steps out. And the bloody video generator first try just does that perfectly. So I get the car going in, even the freaking brake lights light up, the car stops, the door open, and like her foot steps out. And I'm like,
but hang on a
sec,
mate.
Crazy.
You understand this better than most, but
yeah.
I completely sympathize with your last statement. But if we just unpack it for a second, you said even the bloody end lights come on. But from a statistical point of view, if cars pull up, their brake lights go on, right? And so the AI is just statistically producing the most probable thing. And the most probable thing is the lights that come on, not come on. We think that it's been clever in remembering that or somehow cleverly adding that. But in fact, from its point of view, it's just like, that's the thing that's most probable in my model, in my inferencing and networking. So that's what it's going to do. But it's very hard. So here's my question. Do you ever use please or thank yous or any kind of human type acknowledgement when you're doing your prompts? Or are you able to abstract yourself and just tell it to do stuff in a bossy kind of way?
Here's an interesting part. Many of these prompts, I see people make these mile-long prompts, like a freaking half a book is a prompt. For all this, both in Nano Banana and in the video generator, I used 3-4 word prompts, or maybe a sentence, like have the car drive in and stop and she steps out. That's it. No details, no frills. Let it do what it wants based on that. Or in the image, make a close-up. Here, perfect example. We were at the girl stepping out of the car, and my editor mind goes, I want the close-up of the foot, like hitting the ground, the gravel, right? Yeah. So I said, Nano Banana, hey, give me a super close-up of this foot. Nano Banana goes, sure, here you go. Here's the super close-up of the foot. I stick this as an end frame.
As you're telling that story, you're anthropomorphizing, like it's going, hey, yeah, sure. But what you're actually, your actual prompt would be just show like foot, close up on foot.
Super close up of foot, yes. Right, and it figures out, and here's the thing, right? It synthesizes a world where there's a foot coming out of a car, and it understands that this now I need a close-up of this, and whatever details wasn't there in the wide shot, it just invents them for the close-up, and you have these complete, the glitter on the shoes is all there, and it's like
so in some of the earlier programs, like there's angelic agents that are working that is adding to your prompt before it goes to the engine, right? That it's taking your prompt and kind of expanding it. But what I'm interested in here is, as I said earlier, you've moved now to what is a very realistic, very plausible kind of, high-end commercial for a handbag or a perfume or whatever. At what point or at any point did you have to specify cinematic, like wide angle, like lenses? Did you have to sort of say high-end cinematography, or did you give it any reference like a commercial or like a feature film or like that kind of language that would have helped the imagery to look luscious the way that it does?
Let's go back to the failed attempt. I know the Day of the Kitten thing was full of that. Make it look cinematic, do all these things, because it tended to get this overblown, like bad video kind of look, and I had to say like roll off the highlights and all this kind of thing just to get an image that looked more cinematic. For this, every image was based on the look of the previous image, and maybe it was luck of the draw. The ballroom image was really is what everything starts with two people in the ball. Well, it starts with my son, but then in the end, it's kind of the lighting in the ballroom, right? Kind of drives the entire thing. And I never ask for cinematic or anything. It just like some prompts are literally 3 words, like ultra close up of her or whatever stuff.
So
like
we're
that.
getting scene to scene consistency in terms of what I would otherwise describe as geometry or propping or whatever. But you're also getting scene to scene consistency in lighting, kind of cinematic style. I presume you're doing all this at 8-bit as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, all these things are basically 8-bit sRGB burned in kind of stuff.
Have you tried grading them at all?
Actually, very minimally, and especially in again, in this one, I barely touched anything. There were one case where the lighting, even though I tried to incorporate the lighting on the girl in red, and it wasn't really working. So I just did a magic mask and like added some blue because there was blue light and it didn't really pick up on. Minimally. This is
it's quite interesting in some programs, some AI generators, if you do grade them hard. I took an image out of ChatGPT that was effectively meant to be a graphic. Like an iconography type graphic. And I graded the bajillicans out of it because I was trying to do something. And I discovered that there were all of these effectively letters that were only perceptible compressed in the whites effectively. And for no reason, right? Like there was no reason to have text there. It was just that like at some level, an icon graphic that would be on, say, a PowerPoint slide would clearly have text there. So it knew not to put text there, but some level it was expecting text there. So back in the whites, mixed in very, 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 very faintly, was kind of text, which I thought was really interesting, right? Because it was just presuming, well, normally when you want something like this, it goes onto a PowerPoint slide, and PowerPoint slides normally have text and a kind of an iconish kind of picture. So then my question is, have you tried getting different looks? Because if you can't grade it or not going to try and grade it, and push it around much, it's 8-bit for a start. Have you tried doing the opposite of what we've been talking about, which is taking a shot and saying, okay, make this same shot at night, make this same shot like with a different lighting setup?
Actually, yes, this is actually something that happened in this particular little tale. So as I mentioned, I had the woman arriving in a car, a limo, and I had all these shots. And I used the trick of having an end frame where basically I had the foot on the floor. I used it as an end frame. And then I took the same image of her, the wide shot, as a first frame. I said, woman steps out of car and walks to the stairs. So by having one shot and a close-up of that shot, I could generate like 3-4 different shots in the whole sequence, but in one case using it as an end frame, in another case using it as start frame. So of course, my son in the story arrives from a Black Hawk helicopter for reasons, and he's going to sneak in the back. And I had already told it I wanted like the outside of the building, and I have the outside of the building, but I wanted to have him like jump up and like crawl up the wall and like, go into a balcony. So I generated a picture of that, but so I had, again, my son in a tuxedo, I had the house, and said, have him hanging like off a balcony as if he just crawled up the wall. And I get this great picture, but for whatever reason, it decided to do this in like complete sunlight. Which was a little unorthodox. Maybe it felt that the side I've chosen maybe was more lit. For whatever reason, it was very, very, very much daylight. I said, no, this should be kind of at night. And also it had like put the city behind it, and we're kind of rural. So I said, no, it should be at night, and you put the garden stuff in there. And I get an image which is basically really at night, and it fixed the whole thing. Like it put more mansion and garden, but it was like pitch black. It's like, no, not that dark. It should be like dusky and sunset. And then I get an image which is literally the exact same scene, him hanging on exactly the same, but now with a different lighting. And I was like, oh, I can tune the bloody lighting. So now I'm like rubbing my hands, and I started asking even more into, can like slightly later, like 5 minutes later, the sun is just setting, and then I get this shot where he's hanging on the balcony. And then again, I used the trick of sticking that as a last frame in the video generator. And I tell it, he runs from his Black Hawk helicopter up the wall. And the problem is I didn't have like a reference of the right angle. So the video generator decided just to invent some random helicopter. And he runs quite plausibly from this helicopter and up the wall kind of okay. But I didn't like the way the helicopter was still running. We had already established in the previous shot that the helicopter was off. So I was like, nah, let's not. Just have him run from the lawn. I'm going to cut anyway. Run from the lawn and up the wall. And he does. And it's like the whole thing, like, he grabs the wall in a very plausible way as he's climbing up the wall, and even grabs the balcony, which shimmies a little when he grabs it under his weight. Again, and you're going to tell me, yes, it's all statistics because it saw all the Bond movies. Then sure, it did, but it's still, to me, it's very interesting how physics in this world can really work.
That's what I was going to ask you about. That's exactly what I was going to zero in on, is how much do you think it's plausibly producing what I would call cinematic physics? In other words, I mean, clearly film physics doesn't work normally. There's one of the Fast and Furious films where a car's trying to get into a plane, and the whole sequence takes something like 3.5 minutes. Well, the runway would have to be like 25 miles long.
It's like 17 minutes on the runway. I think they computed it should be 37-mile runway or something
like that. Yeah. So I am talking about cinema physics, but how much do you think it's producing plausible? If we were talking in animation terms, I would say, do you feel like the characters have weight and are positioned?
Yes. Yeah, and that is especially stuff like fluid dynamics is way too good to surprise. Like destruction not so much. You can make a thing explode and it kind of explodes, but maybe sometimes it's still there, or the debris doesn't actually match the explosions. So the explosions are give and take, but I told it to pour liquids on stuff, the glass tips over and it spills liquid or whatever, and it looks surprisingly, or even like a character walking through a puddle of water with all the reflections and everything. I know it's technically statistics, but it's still kind of magic. Isn't it kind of magic?
Oh, absolutely.
Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and I think we're pretty close to that at this stage.
Let me just say this, though, because I think people would love a kind of a summary. If you had to sort of pick your sort of 3 or 4 go-to tools and what you go to them for, leaving aside the audio tools, which we discussed a little while ago, what would your 4 or 5 vision tools be for doing stuff?
So what I would recommend anyone starting out with this would be to get a subscription to one of these things that aggregates everything else. Like, for instance, for the banana, yes, Nano Banana, you could use it in the AI playground, or whatever it's called, that Google has. There was a way to trick the LM Arena into using it, and etc. But it was all a little bit slow. If you used it through the Google thing, you got a little watermark in the corner. And I was, for some other reason, looking into FreePick. So FreePick is one of these services that really aggregates everything else. So I got the simple subscription for that, because you got unlimited image generation, even for a fairly cheap, and it had Nano Banana as an option. And for whatever reason, it felt higher resolution, or at least less compression when I used it, and it was faster than when I tried it through Google, even though it's the same thing under the hood. For some reason, this was... Yes. No watermark. Right. I felt the resolution was higher. I could be imagining that. I just felt I got better results, even though it's the same model, but the actual file I downloaded felt better. And it took like 5 seconds instead. It could take some minutes sometimes on the Google thing at the time. Again, this has changed. I was trying to show this to someone else, and it was completely the other way around that day. So you never know with this stuff. But I ended up on FreePick, and it turns out that might have been a good choice, because like the other day, there was a new model called Sea Dream, I think, came out, which is supposed to be the Nano Banana killer. I can tell you in my testing, it's not. But luckily, it just showed up as an item in the drop down on FreePick. They just integrated it immediately that it was released, and I didn't have to look at 20 different sites. I just find a new shiny thing in my drop down, and I could play with Sea Dream suddenly. So and even in FreePick you can also run all the various video, like you can run Hilo Minimax that I use as a separate subscription. You can run this from inside of FreePick. In that case, maybe it becomes slightly more expensive because I assume they want to cut somehow of some cents. So it's cheaper for me still to use my highly expensive unlimited over on Hilo. But if you want to start playing with it, pick that. It's like Kriya is another one of those. They started out like an upscaling detail making thing, but then they turned into no, we're going to integrate everything kind of service. And there's a whole bunch of these. I'm not giving a particular endorsement to FreePick. It's just the one I stumbled on. It's been working for me. Your mileage may vary, but I would try something like that because it has basically all the other ones built in. And yes, you may not get many videos for your $30 a month, but you get some videos, enough maybe to make up your mind about which models you might like more. And of course, there's also the trick of using the LM Arena, because they also added to the LM Arena. It used to be it always was a random choice, but there's like you can do battle mode where you actually pick particular models in this drop down and basically use it or abuse it on LM Arena for sort of free. I think there might be some limit, like, hey, you've been doing this too much and you get thrown out. I don't know, but that's also might be kind of a way to play with these models.
So that's where you're starting people at. Just to finish up, how, in your professional opinion, how far away are you from feeling like for certain productions this is viable for production?
So it depends on the production. Like something we kind of skipped over was the whole VO3 thing when that came out. Google's the VO3, which was the new thing, was that it made the character and them speaking also as part of the video generation, which meant they could act out, emotions and be angry and do stuff. And you probably seen this 100 million of this Bigfoot vlogs, which was something that came up from VO3. And I mean, take something like VO3 and you're doing a pharmaceutical commercial and all you need is an old lady that says, I took these pills and they made me really, really happy. I mean, you don't need to rent an old lady or a camera or anything. You go to VO3 and this lady holds pills, says, oh, it made me really happy. You roll it 3 times, you pick the best one, and you're done. And even today, you can stick that into some commercial. And if people are not looking, and maybe you need to do some upscaling or polishing afterwards or not. I mean, people are looking at everything on their phone anyway these days. So if there's a, pharmaceutical commercial and you all just need the old lady, for that kind of stuff, we are already there and we've been there for a while.
Is there an upreser that you use?
I tend not to carry. So for the very olden days, I used the upraiser in Kriya, which has some kind of enhancer, but as I think we mentioned in the previous podcast, it actually removed one of my lip syncs, thinking it was an error. So I haven't really they gotten good enough for my use case that, I mean, it's YouTube nonsense. I'm not expecting any of this to show up on the silver screen anytime soon.
No, of course, but I guess for a lot of us, it's the experimentation with the sort of back of our mind's thought about, will there be an application where I use this? And if some client has some last minute thing, or there's one throwaway aspect, or for example, if you're making footage that had to appear on a TV in a scene that you're otherwise shooting, that this would be a very good way of producing
Absolutely, you could do that. And I also played around with, because sometimes, like we were saying, faces at a distance sometimes are not that great. And also when you're using the first and last frame, it can happen that even though you have the perfect face on the first frame and the perfect face on the last frame, somewhere in the middle, it can get a little mushy. But there are various face replacement tools. There's one called Face Fusion I've been playing with that you can run locally, and you can just say, this person is supposed to look like this throughout the whole shot, and it can improve stuff quite a lot. And it just takes a few seconds to run. So yeah, face replacement tools can give the illusion of more resolution also, because they don't have this problem like the face at a distance becomes blurred. They're actually kind of the fix for that, because they will stick that face in, like scale down properly at distant stuff without
So again, we back to that same point we made halfway through the podcast, which is really you need to have a range of tools, a smorgasbord, if you like, a collection of these tools, and you're choosing to concatenate them in a way that works for you, and knowing that you may have an artifact here or a problem there, and you'll have to find another way around that, because nothing is really nailing everything. But in conglomerate, in like a composite sort of form, you are actually able to produce pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, and I wouldn't recommend anyone doing it the way I do, where I add a bunch of subscriptions everywhere. It gets expensive. This is, like I said, this is the most expensive hobby I ever had, and that's including me
I'm going to have to
collecting
ask you,
vintage
how much are we
synthesizer.
sort of talking about? Are we talking like a couple of $100 a month? Are we talking a couple of thousand?
No, but a few hundred or something.
Okay, so
I guess
that's
so.
completely tolerable. If a studio wants to set up a skunk room,
there's a guy in the garage, not so much.
No, but I mean, exactly. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you want to have a skunkworks kind of, hacker version that your company is or team is looking at, it's not thousands of dollars. And let's face it, like you're buying nuke licenses, they're thousands of dollars a month, right? So
yeah,
it's all relative.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no. To me, it's a little much, and I actually got trying to prune, because sometimes, I'm gonna just try it for a month. I saw you go monthly, $30
and then you've
here,
got to remember to
and then you
remember
it. So now the bill comes for everything. It's like, ooh,
yeah. That's the bill you don't want your partner to see. Hey, in finishing, is there any particular sort of Achilles heel at the moment that you're thinking, man, I'd really like somebody to solve this one, because that's the thing I keep on bumping into?
Yeah, I mean, faces. We're back to that, and it's a perfect segue to back to something we almost talked about before. But it's like, we are so sensitive to faces as humans. So all the other stuff is probably just as janky as the faces are, but we don't notice because we don't really care if the chandelier is slightly different. But if a face is even like half a pixel off, we immediately react to it. So what I would love to see, even in like the video generator, like I said, Hilo had this reference feature, but that's only a separate thing. You can't use start end frame. That's only a reference. I would love to have the reference throughout, and even just like, here are the 5 characters. Here's the 5 people. So anytime you see a face that's kind of like this, make it like this. If you see like the lady look kind of like this, yeah, make it look like this in every shot. And I mean, the technology is there, because I wired exactly that up in ConfUI with ginormous spaghetti of stuff. So the technology is completely plausible. It can be done. It's not built into these services. Like, they could stick a LoRa somewhere in on the chain of something, or do whatever the wavy stuff you need to do. It's possible, and that's one of the missing things for sure. The other missing things is maybe even more control. Like, we have started end frames are all great. Adding reference would be great, but particular poses, particular motions, and there's kind of ways to do it. And yes, if you go in ConfUI, you can do all these things, but I don't think there's a service where I can. Here's the start frame. Here's like a stick figure animation of what I want to happen, and here's the end frame, and here's the 3 people. Just do it, and 4K, and
the less control
whatever
you have, the more that this stuff moves towards what I would call stock footage, in the sense that stock footage can look really great, but it isn't exactly what you want, right? And what we want is the control, because without control, we kind of go to stock footage, and at stock footage, it looks good, right? But we don't get exactly what we want. As we add control, we move to being able to get what we want, but with effectively the price and the convenience of stock footage. And so there's this line: the less control you have, the more magical it is. But that isn't exactly what we want. we end up with some more compromises, obviously, when we don't have that control. But having said that, there is an exceedingly dramatic amount of control being added almost monthly as our regular chats are proving.
Yeah, it's like this stuff, tomorrow something will come out that makes everything we said in this entire podcast irrelevant. And I guess there's a few days before this gets released from when we're recording it, and maybe something new popped up in these few days. It was kind of the case last time we talked.
I've got to say, last time we talked, I thought the stuff that you're doing was extraordinary, and now it looks really kind of dated, even though it was 8 months ago.
Yeah. Oh, it does. It absolutely does, especially like the first episode. No, I'm totally down with that. Absolutely. But weirdness upon weirdness, I turned on one of the episodes a day here and I said, wait a minute, this looks better than I remember. And for a while, I don't know if they stopped, but YouTube was like experimenting with like an AI upscaling thing going on. So videos started looking AI generated, even though they were real. And I'm not sure if that was a temporary thing, because I looked at one of my episodes, like these shots look a lot better than I remember them. And I was super confused. And then I was like, this is YouTube doing some crap on top. Like there's more details here. I know how blurry this was. Weirdness.
Well, Zap, I really appreciate you taking time to do this, because quite frankly, you have invested a lot of man hours in kind of working through these things, and it's a real step up for somebody that wants to have a play to get some. Also, you have no allegiance to any particular app or program or site, and so
and this is all on my personal time.
It's all unfiltered, so that's great. So I thank you again so much. We're going to put links obviously to the films, and you've seen some of it if you've been watching the video as we've been talking. And then we'll also put links to some of the specific sites that you've recommended so that people can actually just go there directly. If my Australian accent or your sort of Scandinavian accent have caused any problems, don't worry, listeners. It'll be there in the show notes for links for getting to the URLs.
Also, by the way, there's one detail about this video we forgot to mention. I made the whole thing in 1 day. 1 day.
That is astounding.
Mm-hmm.
With that mic drop, I will say thank you so much, and hopefully we'll talk to you again, because there's some new revolutionary technology that facilitates some new experiments.
Some new stuff will be here tomorrow.
Thanks, man. See you later. Bye.
Ciao.
Well, thanks, Zap, for taking time to chat with us. I really enjoyed hearing about your processes and workflows and tools that you use. It's actually spurred me to really want to explore this area a lot farther, especially considering what's happened in the last 9 months. Well, that's it for this episode. For Mike Seymour, I'm John Montgomery. Thanks for listening to or watching this FX podcast.